The Charleston County Coroner's Office has released the name of a man who was killed in a shooting Wednesday night in North Charleston. The coroner says 35-year-old Javon Brown died at the scene of that shooting in the 2200 block of Bailey Drive in North Charleston. Police responded to that shooting last night shortly before 11 o'clock. When they arrived, they saw Brown lying on the ground in the front of a nearby home. No arrests have been made. North Charleston Police are continuing to investigate that shooting.